Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Josh. In this video, I'm going to be doing a carburetor replacement on this 25cc, 210 mile per hour Poulan Pro leaf blower. The issue with this is it's not running right. The guy that I bought it from, I scooped it up real cheap because it wasn't running right. He said that it's about 3 years old, and that seems to match up. These carburetors, they don't typically last too long. The diaphragms in them and the gaskets get hard and develop issues. It's just a cheap design. They don't last very long. Luckily, replacement carburetors are only about $10, so I picked one up off of eBay, and I'll show you guys how to install it. So let's get started. First thing you're going to need is a 4mm Allen key. You're going to take two bolts out here that hold the carburetor and the airbox onto the manifold block there. Now, I will note, these might be a SAE size. I don't know. The 4mm fits in here really tight. So it might technically be a standard size, not a metric. So you'd use whatever size is closest to 4mm and it should work just fine. Alright, so you want to keep these in here for just a second so it doesn't fall off. Pull the two bolts out. The airbox will come off. Just set these to the side. Next thing you're going to do is, I recommend squeezing the throttle trigger. That way it pushes it back, and then you're going to bend the carburetor in a way that the throttle linkage can disconnect from the hookup hole right here. After that, all we're going to do is pop the fuel lines off. That one's kinking over pretty bad. Oh gosh. Open the cap and release any pressure. That should have been the first step. Alright, and that's good right there. Go ahead and pop this other one off. These can be kind of tricky to get off. Just take your time, don't rip them. If they do rip, it's a good indication that the lines were brittle enough that they need to be replaced anyway. If they don't come off easy, just twist them. That should break free any stiffness that they got to them on the fastener there, on the inlet and outlet. If the gasket's intact, just go ahead and reuse it. This one popped off nice and easy. Alright, let's take a look at this line here. It looks like it's kinked, in which case I'm going to replace this line. If it's not in bad shape, don't bother with it. I'm going to do that, and we'll get back to the video in a second. Alright, got the new fuel line installed. I didn't do that as part of the video so I can keep it short. There's plenty of videos on YouTube on how to do fuel lines if you need to. They go over it in more detail and with better footage than I could. So with that said, let's get started with the new carburetor install. Alright, so we got our new carburetor. This is about $10 on eBay. Looks pretty nice. It's got a different colored primer bulb, but that doesn't really matter. When you install it, you want the primer bulb facing here. There's a little indentation here, and there's one on the air filter housing as well that sort of goes around the primer bulb, so it's got easy access. You have your adjustment jets here. We'll adjust that later if we need to. And then down here you have your fuel line hookups. Here is kind of interesting. When you turn the choke on, this one doesn't really have a choke. It's just got this pin. That might provide a slight restriction, but not much. And all this does is it presets the throttle a little bit. You can see it moving in there. And that helps it start. So with that said, let's get started. Alright, so this gasket came off really easy. It's in good shape. You don't want to reuse these if they are torn or coming apart. If they don't come off easy, just make a new one or get a new one. And a lot of these eBay kits, they come with a new gasket as well. One thing I want to note, when you put it on, you want to make sure that this hole in the gasket lines up with the hole, this little hole on top of the carburetor, and you also want to make sure the hole in the gasket lines up with the hole in the manifold. I don't know what this is for, but I see it on pretty much every two-stroke engine, and they have gaskets to match, so I'm going to do it the right way. So let's see. Get that on there. First off, real quick, let's figure out which one is our intake and which one is our return for the fuel. You can just by putting your finger over one of the holes. So this one's got suction on it. So this is the intake. That new line that we put in has got the filter on it. That means that's the intake. So we'll go ahead and put that on. That went on no problem. Put the return. The return is just so you don't flood the engine when you're priming it. Any excess fuel can go back down into the tank. Alright, so once you got your lines installed, go ahead and put our throttle back on. It just goes on like that. Next, make sure that you got the hole in the gasket right there lined up properly. In this case, it's towards the primer bulb, so we'll remember that. Next, what you want to do is put the screws in your air box, hold those in with your fingers, put that through on the carburetor. What this allows you to do is it gives you little pegs on the back for your gasket to sit on, so you can get it lined up easy when you put it back in. That way you don't have to be trying to hold it in there with an extra 4 hands that you don't have. You put the screws all the way through. Push that on right there. Get these started by hand. That one needed a little bit of back threading, but it's in now. Alright, just double check, make sure everything's lined up properly, and then we'll tighten that down. You don't want to get these too tight, but snug them up. These are into plastic, so it wouldn't be too hard to strip it. Get them snug. Make sure everything works. Make sure your throttle is hooked up properly. Alright, that all moves like it should. So let's go ahead and put the air filter and the cover back on, and we'll give this thing a Oh yes, the combination of the new carburetor and that replaced fuel line. This thing primes a lot faster. I think the fuel line was really cutting off the flow. Alright, let's fire this thing up. Alright, so my camera didn't have enough charge at the time that I was going to start it, so I started it. It started maybe, I want to say 6 pulls. Didn't run quite right off the bat, but once it ran for about 10 seconds, it ran great. It's just sort of purring right now, and it revs up real quick, very responsive. Way better than it was before. It's snowing right now. It sounds really good. Top end is really quite fast. Top end sounds good, bottom end sounds good, so I'm not going to do any adjustments. These are pretty easy to adjust. You need a special tool for it, but this one sounds good. So, this job is done. Thanks for watching. Please consider subscribing, hitting the like button. And if you got any questions or comments, leave it down in the comment section, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Yay, it's winter! Who needs a snow shovel?